Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Today I have a guest from the UK. I'm just going to do a quick introduction. Louise Kirk. She's the UK coordinator for an international character education program called Alive to the World. So we're going to learn a little bit more about that today. This is a program for children aged 5 to 13, as far as I know. And it's utilizing storytelling to impart values for a happy and successful life. And it bridges Christian values with non-Christian language with other pro-family organizations. So welcome to my podcast, Louise.
Thank you so much, Tammy. It's a great pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you for coming. Now, I didn't meet you at the art conference or anything, did I? I think Ian probably brought us together. Yes?
I saw you at a distance and I came up to say hello, but you already had a crowd round you. So I contacted you.
It was a busy time, huh?
It was. Oh, what a conference, though.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. Came away sort of
good.
Somewhere on cloud nine. And I, of course, loved all the things that you say. I was only there, it was that lunchtime.
Yes.
So you were hosting other people?
I had a lunchtime seminar.
Exactly.
With only a few people. It was really nice to have everybody come. It gave me encouragement to move further with that same idea.
Good. Excellent. Well, I thought it worked really well. But the whole of ARC was great. And I particularly liked the fact that we were able to contact the speakers and other people who looked interesting beforehand and during it. And so then I've followed up with you afterwards because you said, yes, do get in contact, do come up and meet me. And it wasn't possible, so I wrote again afterwards, just saying.
Oh, yeah, well, that worked perfectly, so that's good. So let's start by welcoming you and thanking you. Thank you very much for joining me today. Can you share with my audience initially what drew you to the work of character education and how your journey has shaped your understanding of family values?
I came to it because I was a governor at my children's village school. And I was always aware of the dangers of sex education. I could explain that I started off as a natural family planning teacher. And I was just fascinated by the science of fertility and very aware of the fact that this isn't always correctly taught. So when I saw the program that was being introduced at my children's village school, and then discovered that they were destroying earlier straightforward programs on puberty to introduce something which much more aggressive, I thought I got to look around for something different. Because I've always believed in being proactive, not just saying this is no good, let's try and find something better. At the same time, and this is where I think providence comes in, my parents were out in Venezuela. He was ambassador, my father was ambassador in Venezuela. And their very good friend, Christine Vollmer, met them, obviously, and then remembered me, and in some extraordinary way got me invited to a congress in the Vatican on fatherhood. So I tipped up there as a young mother, 4 small children. What am I doing here? Why am I talking about fatherhood? And it changed my life. It really did. It opened my eyes to things that I just never thought of before. So when Christine later said to me, I've got this character education program, could you bring it into England? These two things married. I was looking for something, and she said, here's an answer, character education. So that's how it came to be. I would say it's providential. And I certainly didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing at all. But
sometimes I think now I realize if you don't know what you're doing, then it's probably a good thing.
I wouldn't have had the courage to start if I'd known.
Right. There's that, right? And if I would have had something that I would have planned, it wouldn't have been as good as whatever the plan might have been if I would have been more patient.
Yeah. Well, yes. But having said that, I now so believe in it completely. I was completely won over. And Christine herself is just the most wonderful of ladies, absolutely wonderful. I look up to her hugely, and I know you're going to speak to her soon, so I hope you'll enjoy her as much as I do. She's so wise,
Oh, I'm
and
sure I will.
she's got such a gloriously optimistic view of life, of human nature. And one of the things that comes through all the way through Alive to the World is there in its title, Alive to the World. Everything is positive. Everything is drawing out the best of children, and I should say of teachers, because teachers often say that they learn through the program as well. So I think it's absolutely
So,
great.
you've had an opportunity to speak and write internationally. What has been the most surprising or impactful moment in your experience that stands out for you?
Gosh, there are so many. One of the things that I was really touched by and amazed by was going to Kazakhstan. We were invited there for 10 days of giving talks in two particular places, Astana and Almaty. And there the problems are different because they don't yet have all the really sort of aggressive, comprehensive sex education that we have in the West. But they do have a big problem of boys and men not living up to their roles of life in the family. And that was particularly why they asked us to go there. So we were, if you like, trying to, when I say we, I should explain my husband came too, and a very good friend called Belinda Brown, who's also a social anthropologist. And she has particularly studied through her husband, unfortunately he's died, but his work, the importance of teaching boys well and the importance of fatherhood. So that fitted really well. So there were the three of us, and we gave a full program on the different aspects of family life. And then I was also talking about how you can teach that to children through the Alive to the World program, and also through what I think is very important, the sex education that parents can give to their own children. So going to a country which had and there are only something like 1% of people in Kazakhstan are Catholic, 1% Protestant, about a quarter are Orthodox, and then there are others are Muslim and other. But this tiny community, it was the Protestant and the Catholics, actually took the trouble to take us out there because they wanted to hear from us. And I thought that was amazing, really, really amazing. And I so respected the people we met and loved it completely. But there are other
How
moments.
long ago was that?
It was just before COVID broke.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, no, I'm wrong. Sorry, I'm mixing up, and I know it was 2022. Yeah, no, I went.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, because I went to India to a conference just before COVID. So and that was a different occasion, obviously. Yeah.
Do you have another story of somewhere that you've gone to speak?
Yes, Australia, Melbourne. And that stunned me because we were just a one-day family congress, and I was speaking at the very end of it. And it was just on the beautiful things about family life and passing on good family values. And yet the barrage of people who couldn't bear to listen to us was just stunning. Our little conference had to move house, I think about 4 or 5 times. And each time that anybody was said they would host us, they were threatened that the next event held in that hall would be sabotaged. So it was, say a wedding reception. Then these thugs promised that they'd come and thug up the wedding party. Eventually,
Why do you think that was? Why do you think that was?
Well, one of the speakers that I was with was a marvelous doctor called Dr. Angela Lanfranchi, and she's a breast surgeon. And she is so alarmed by the lovely young women that she meets under her knife, because of both abortion and the pill, that she is beginning to speak out, or she has for some time spoken out. And there were people on the ABC, that's the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, who were so cross with her that they made a big noise. And this whole thing, I mean, I found the whole thing, it actually went up as far as Tony Abbott and, the Prime Minister, and it was extraordinary. Anyway, they banged their gongs and they did all this sort of thing. But at the end of the day, all the bad publicity brought the people, and we had about 400 people in that room. It was great. And I shall add this last little bit because I was the very last speaker. And by then the bangs had stopped. They'd given up with their drums. And when I'd finished giving my piece, do you know, a man came up and he volunteered to pay for my flight? I mean, I've never met him before or since.
Wow.
But he paid for my flight for coming out there. So all of that
Oh.
experience was stunning. You will have gathered I learned just as much. I'm talking about what I gain as much as what other people may gain from me. And so that's where I always regard it. You meet the most wonderful people.
So let's get back to the character education and what you think storytelling, how you think storytelling plays a role in shaping children's values.
The most important thing, if you're going to try and impart values through talking or through lessons as opposed to just, around the kitchen table or whatever, is that they enjoy what they're doing. And anybody enjoys storytelling, especially children. So you disarm them and they get caught up in the stories. Now, I should explain that the way Light of the World works, and this is Christine's idea, and it's not my idea, it's her idea, is that she and others, she didn't do it alone, she had other people helping her, worked out what are the main values that you want to become a successful adult. And they wrote a great list, and then they thought there are particular moments in a child's life when those values are best learned. So it's not just a question of storytelling, it's a question of creating stories that apply at the correct moment in a child's life when they want to learn them, when they're ready to learn them. And what we do in A Light to the World is have one continuous story. So each year is a different book, basically. And it's composed of basically could be a chapter a week of the school term, but it could be arranged any way you like. But that's sort of 30-odd chapters. And so each chapter will be trying to impart a particular value or characteristic. But obviously they come round time and again. And the first object of the story is to help the child to know something. They'll pick up from the story. I mean, to give an example, one that I always liked, there is a story about a little boy who's already doing Saturday work, and it's in a shop. And needless to say, he's running to get there on time. And as he's approaching the shop, an old lady says, "Could you help me cross the road?" Now, he is confronted with, do I stop, become late for my job and help the old lady cross the road? Or do I go to the job and be there on time? Now, there's no right or wrong in either of those two things, but any child can work out that this is a conundrum. This is something we can talk about. So that is knowing something. It's knowing that there are, it's not just being kind, and it's not just being punctual. Being kind and being punctual, there's a tension between the two. So having known that, they then, in class discussions and in further stories, they'll realize that this is something that comes up in different circumstances. So from the story, they learn the value for themselves. You don't say, you have to be kind, you have to be punctual. They learn it for themselves. They then see that it applies in different circumstances. But then, and this is very important, you encourage them in something they can do now to strengthen their willpower. So that it might be at the end of the day, they would suggest it for themselves in class. Let's think of some way when I can be and make an extra effort, perhaps be on time when my mum calls me to get ready for school. Or it could be some little occasion when I could think of how to be kind to someone I don't know. You can see there are many, many possibilities, but it works through that scenario. But storytelling is much more important than that. It sticks in the memory. And children go forwards and backwards. I mean, my own youngest son used these books. And he used to say to me, Mum, it's amazing how often an alive to the world scenario happens after the event, as well as making sense of something that's happened in the past. The object, obviously, is to broaden the children's experience, because every child could experience that, but they're not going to experience all 30-odd occurrences that are coming in the books. So without having to experience it for themselves, they feel part of the lives of the children that they get to know through the storytelling. And they different teachers teach it in different ways. But one teacher told me her class likes putting their own names from the class into the story. So instead of Charlie and Alice, they might be Joan and John, whatever, so that they associate closely with the children. But you can use them any way you like.
Now, these are for kids between 5 and 13, is that correct?
That's what we've got in England. And Christine will explain that they go all the way up to, we call it sixth form, but the top of the school in America. I think that in America itself, they're electronic formats, but in Latin America, they have the books like we have, and those go all the way up. And interestingly, in Kenya, for instance, they concentrate first on the ages kind of 14, 15, 16. So that's where they pitched in. So obviously, in many countries, it has taken on, as I'm doing it, as a volunteer, doing it out of love because we believe in something. But it's difficult to do everything at once when you're doing it from that basis. So, you don't necessarily have the whole thing, but the idea is definitely that it goes from the youngest children, which I really believe in, right up to the eldest children.
And why start at 5?
Oh, that's so important. Really, really important, because you are capturing the children when they're still idealistic. And also, you see, the program was specifically devised by Christine to help children who have no longer got the framework of values, either from their family or from, say, Christianity or their religion. One of the areas that she started to use it, she devised it for, was the shanty towns outside Caracas, where she found both of these things. Now, you need to capture those children before, if you like, they've gone wrong. That's a horrible word to use. But many of the children who come from broken homes will be feeling a little bit broken inside. They won't necessarily find it very easy to make friends, to be the sorts of children who are immediately popular. So what we do from the age of 5 is to capture all those children so that they learn those very basic skills of self-confidence, of knowing how to get on with other children, of learning that sort of positive way to relate to their teachers, learning the basics of how to listen, all these really important things. And if you capture them when they're tiny, you've got them all the way up. And I can Christine herself will say, well, the sex education is begin at 4, 5. We've got to do the same.
So so you have children, and your children grew up in the education system. What are some of the lessons you've learned about teaching sexuality and relationships
I should
to
emphasize
children?
that to children, I should emphasize that my role in the sort of intimacy of sexuality has always been teaching, particularly my own daughter. My husband taught our 3 sons, but also in teaching the parents. I am a passionate believer that parents are the best teachers. So I haven't myself, I know that other people do this, but I haven't myself stood in front of a class and taught sexuality to children. I'm teaching the teachers, and I'm teaching particularly the parents.
Oh, okay. Okay. So from that point of view then,
Yeah,
what have you found? I guess what have you found that has been that has landed well and you can see is fitting for the things that are going on in the education system now?
the first thing lands well is that when you explore the whole subject of sexuality, which I particularly like to do if I've got a smaller group of parents where they feel fairly free to talk, it rapidly comes out that one parent will say, but my child this. And for instance, if you've got a child whose parents are vets, they can talk all about the sort of physics or biology rather, of sexuality with not a blush. But if you've got another child who comes from I don't know, lawyers or something where they're not used to talking about subjects like that, that whole family can be very much more discreet. And so you rapidly discover that different mothers and fathers will say, but my child this, my child that. And once I let them say something like that, I then say, now do you see why it is so, I don't use the word cruel, I use it here, but so difficult for children to have a standard class where they're all treated the same, because different children are so different. And it's like a coin going down in people's brains. They're saying, yes, of course, you're so right. That is, I think, something that I love discovering, because all the time we are trying to bring out the parents and making them realize that it's not a question of how clever they are at teaching sexuality. It's a question of opening up their self-confidence and their knowledge. So I wrote my own book, Sexuality Explained, a guide for parents and children. It's a very simple title, but it's based on exactly the same principles, basically, that The Light of the World is based on. Very positive, done in storytelling. When I say storytelling, it's conversations between, first of all, mum and daughter, then father and son. That's really important, getting the fathers involved. And then at the end, it's both parents with children. And when I do it all on the basis of the beauty of fertility and of God's creation. So I don't bring religion into it at all, which shows that you don't have to. But it's very, the starting points that I give are that human life is special, sacrosanct. If you don't start with that, you won't get where I'm going to. So, but also that the gametes, that is, that the egg and the sperm, are also special, and that there is dignity in the human person, and that dignity is important in its own right. That shame can be a beautiful, positive thing, but it can also be a negative thing. And you should never strip aside anybody's modesty. That's also quite important. But with those starting points, all I do is go away with the beauty of the science of fertility. And one of the things today, even one of my friends, because I worked through lots and lots of workshops, obviously with parents, to refine the book. I didn't just write it. And one of my friends, who's got 9 children, said to me, Louise, I learned so much from your book. So that pleased me. And
Mhm.
the idea is to actually, I don't know if you ever played croquet, but I think of playing croquet
Mhm.
when you're sending a ball in one direction because you really want to hit the other one that way. So although I'm teaching the children, what I'm really doing is teaching the parents. And because I believe there are moments in life, just like Christine says, that we all are prepared to learn things, I reckon that parents want to learn things at the moment when they're teaching their children. So it's a moment of an open window. So that's why I really enjoy teaching them things that many don't know.
I learned to play croquet from my husband. He taught me, and he still says sometimes publicly that we met when we were 8 years old. So we were very young.
Yes.
And I used to like to, if I got close enough to his ball, I would whack it right down the street.
Good for you.
Yeah, yeah.
But they followed
And
each
he
other.
and then he would
Yeah.
play, and then he would play with me the next day. So that was good,
Ah,
you know.
but you were both going the same direction from what you were saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
trying to send balls different directions sometimes. Yeah, no, that's really good.
So you've expressed frustration with current relationships and sex education. Can you share a specific instance that motivated you to challenge these teachings?
Yes, very simple one. I told you that the school nurse, I didn't tell you it was a school nurse, it was the school nurse, came into our little village school. When I say village school, it was all of 50 odd children. It was a tiny little school. And she showed us the program, which was then, in fact, it was going to go into about half our English school. So it was going to become a really popular program. And when I looked at the biology of menstruation and the fertile cycle of the girl, the biology was incorrect. I was
Hmm.
horrified. I didn't expect the morality to be the morality that I went with, but I was innocent enough in those days to think that the biology would be correct. And I actually took that film home so that I put it on still so that I could actually watch it, and say that I really was right, that it was wrong. And after that, I was actually in Madrid for a big World Congress of Families. And there somebody had been studying all the sex education programs they could find at that time in Spain and said not a single one was biologically correct. So one of the ways in which all this sex education is sold to teachers, sold to parents, sold to children, is they will learn the facts. They don't. And I say that with confidence because it's not only a question of the facts that are wrong, it's a many facts which aren't included at all. And that's wrong too, in my view. You only get
Oh,
a
yeah.
fair picture by including everything that needs to be included. So that's
Can you give me an
basically what.
example of something? Example
Absolutely,
of something
yes.
that's missing then?
The mucus cycle. The mucus cycle is regularly left out. And also the brain development of children, because all these things are awkward, you see. If you put children on the pill, which again is one of the things that is behind the whole way that it's taught, the sex education is taught in our country, they don't experience the mucus cycle at all. And that would be a bit
And
unnerving.
can you explain what that is?
Yes, of course.
The Nuka cycle?
The
Yes.
mucus cycle, yeah. There are three necessary aspects to fertility, and each of them are as important as the other. One is the sperm, one is the egg, and one is the mucus, the fertile mucus. So at the time of ovulation, you get this very special mucus, which only lasts for, depends on the woman, but normally maybe 3-4 days, perhaps less than that. Sometimes it's only for an hour or two. And it's by being able to pick up that mucus that you can understand your fertility, and all modern methods of natural family planning are basically worked out on understanding the mucus. But you see, there is so much. I mean, I'm lucky enough to have attended lectures by Dr. Eric Oderblad. I don't know if you've ever come across his name, but he was an amazing doctor. He spent 30, 40 years just studying the cervix. And he used to introduce his lectures saying, you know, I spend my life on an organ that's long, 1 inch long. You'd never think I could spend all my life studying it. But one of the fascinating things that he showed us is that the cervix ages with a woman's age. So a woman aged 20 has a different cervix and amount of cervical mucus from a woman aged 30. So, which is one of the reasons why a woman is more fertile when she's older. Sorry, more fertile when she's younger and less fertile when she's older. But the pill ages the cervix, and sometimes that never comes back. But what's even more fascinating is that pregnancy and birth gives added youth to the cervix. And that's why a woman who is older but has already had children can go on having children in a way that a first-time mother can't. Now, that's a basic bit of information, and I think every girl ought to know it. And it's something that actually Angela Lanfranchi, this breast surgeon I'm talking about, she's passionate about it. She says every girl ought to know that her cancer risk, and this is actually, another subject, I'm switching subjects, but her breast cancer
That's all right.
risk is, again, grows with every year after the age of 20. So that, it's very small. I'm not saying it's a huge risk, but a woman's breast cancer risk without any other interference, age 30 is double the amount that it is age 20. And she said she herself, if she'd known that, might have been encouraged to have children earlier. I mean, well, I'm just giving you a few tidbits, but there's just so much there.
So
Yeah,
in terms of the breast health, then
yes,
having children and nursing the baby
yeah, that's great.
is keeps your breast tissue young.
Yes, absolutely right. Completely right. But it's even more complicated than that. Having a first baby and brought to term in some way, and I'm not, as you can see, a biologist, but it firms up the cells of the breast. Before that, you've got a lot of cells which are not fully formed. And that's why, particularly if you brought your first pregnancies, you are much more inclined to breast cancer. Because instead of the breast going through this firming up process and maturing, which then is better be able to resist breast cancer, the first thing in pregnancy that happens is your breast tissue proliferates. And if you cut that process short before the sort of firming up stage, which is towards the end of the pregnancy, then you've got all the proliferation cut short. And that can be triggered by later pregnancy. So one of the things she's saying, she's so sad, is that a woman who has a later pregnancy, might have young children, can trigger a breast cancer, which may be the result of an abortion when she was much younger.
Yeah, well, all of these things that God gives us are there for a reason.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
And for us to think that we know better,
no,
gets us in trouble.
And I hope what I'm trying to put across is that what brought me to become a natural family planning teacher, now it's called fertility awareness and fertility awareness-based methods, whatever you call it, was my awe at what I saw. And a very quick story, my husband became a Catholic when he was about 25, long before he met me, bachelor, stubborn man. He was teased by his friends, okay, now you're a Catholic, you're going to have to support this thing called Humanae Vitae. He didn't even know about it. And before he blinked, he was the chairman of the Natural Family Planning Education Foundation with a feisty Irish nun as his director. So when we became engaged, obviously the splendid nun, Sister Nuka, taught us about our own fertility. And my eyes opened and I thought, well, this is wonderful. Why doesn't everybody know about it? So what I'm saying is that this is something which is so beautiful, and yet it's put across as that thing that the Catholics do. It's nothing to do with what the Catholics do. It's the way God made us. And so one of my passions is putting across the idea this is not for Catholics, it's for anybody. And it's perhaps another aspect of the what I find difficult about the way sex education is taught in our country is that very often, even in faith schools, it's put across as this is your faith, but the facts are over here. And what I'm saying is, no, your facts are all wrong because you're leaving out things which ought to be there, and you're even getting your biology wrong. And what's more, the faith isn't something separate from who you are. It's all part of yourself, your spirituality, your biology, your psyche. The whole of you is all one of you. You can't separate these things out. And it's nothing to do with, well, it's to do with your faith, because if you've got the faith side, then that reinforces it. But it's there for everybody.
It's very funny, isn't it? Say, well, maybe I'll just do away with my psychology. I won't have anything to do with my psychology. I'll live through material life and spirituality, but nothing to do with my psychology. And that should work out just fine. It's like, I don't think so. That doesn't sound like a good plan. It sounds funny when you say it that way, doesn't it?
It does. It might interest you to know that Viktor Frankl was one of the big influences on Christine. But what's more, she was one of the people who almost discovered Viktor Frankl. She got him invited out from Austria to Latin America, and he used to be a guest in her house. So a lot of what we teach in A Light to the World comes from these wonderful psychologists, such as Viktor Frankl and Martin Seligman.
That's
and
fascinating.
I mean, I'm leaving this a bit to one side because it's up to Christine to tell you all about it. But the depths of A Light to the World are much greater than just looking at a story. You don't realize how deep it is just looking at the story. It's another way of putting it. But it goes down deep. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating to think about the path that, say, someone like Viktor Frankl took, guided by his faith, that we've been able to build on that work. And so it's an accumulation of God's will over the years for a deeper and deeper understanding.
Completely
It's
so.
a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Absolutely right.
Yeah, beautiful thing.
Yes.
So fertility appreciation. How do you think a deeper understanding of fertility can positively impact children's self-respect and relationship in their future?
Well, there is a program which actually I am trained in. I took the training last November. No, I'm wrong. Gosh, the whole year's passed. November a year ago. Because I'm so interested in this subject. It's called Teen Star, and it was created by a Dr. Hannah Klaus. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Have you heard of it or not?
No, I haven't heard of it.
Well,
Teen Star.
Teen Star. Dr. Hannah Klaus thought to herself, just as I may say I thought when I was learning all about my own fertility with Sister Nuka, I thought, well, we're learning this much too late. Why are we learning this just when we're as an engaged couple? We should learn this when we're young at school. And Dr. Hannah Klaus was, she was both a nun and a doctor, and someone who is equally passionate to teach children about fertility. And so she had all these ideas about what she was going to teach. And then she had a grandmother who came up to her and said, sorry, Sister Klaus or Sister Hannah, this isn't going to work. You are telling youngsters what to do. I know what we need to do. We need to ask them, what questions do they want answered? And so, and I'm terribly sorry, I can't remember her name. But anyway, this splendid grandmother, and my daughter has actually met her, went off and they asked lots of teenagers, girls and boys, what do you most want to know about your sexuality? And so they mix both these things together, the understanding of the biology and the answering of children's adolescents' real questions when they're at that age. And they put together this Teen Star program, which you can only enter with the specific say-so of your parents and of the children themselves. You can't just enter it because the child wants it or just because the parents want it. Both have to want it. And they have found exactly what I'm saying, that the boys and girls, and they teach them separately, boys' classes and girls' classes, so that they can be relaxed. They found exactly that they gain in self-respect. Many of the ones who might have been sexually active drop it. They dress differently. They get really interested in how the other sex works, because that's, of course, the biggest question. How does the boy's psyche work? How does the girl's psyche work? And the fascinating thing for girls is understanding how their hormones change through the cycle so that their own moods change. I mean, what I would say is, you see, whereas teaching children contraception when they're age 11, 12 doesn't make sense, because it's impractical for them to use it if you want them to go on to be this successful adult that I was talking about at the very beginning, it makes complete sense to teach this fertility to teenagers. You're not going against the grain. You're teaching them something they have a right to know. Every child and every adolescent has a right to understand themselves. And what's more, because you are teaching the truth of who we are, there is nothing in the latest science which we don't want to know about. So whereas the whole contraceptive science that is being taught still is desperately out of date, it's just old-fashioned, because there are things like the knowledge of the brain development in adolescence, or now the depression which comes through use of the pill, especially by adolescents, that is inconvenient, so they just don't teach it. We're delighted to teach about the latest brain development, or anything we discover, anything about the beauty of fatherhood, the beauty of motherhood. There's absolutely nothing we're not delighted to teach and pass on. And so it means that wherever new, wherever excited, wherever bringing in anything that anyone wants to teach us. So I'm really truthful when I said, going to something like ARC, I'm always thinking, how do we encapsulate any of this that is of relevance to children in such a way that they can understand it?
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's a good question.
Not easy.
Well, parents,
Yeah.
I guess parents, and
Yeah.
siblings, because
Yeah.
siblings are at the right age, a little older and a little younger, to have that conversation. But if you don't have the information at hand, then those conversations will be uncomfortable. So having this
Yes.
Teen Star program, or whatever happens with
Yes.
the Alive to the World program, helps people within their family engage and educate them on their sexuality. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sounds
You're
like
absolutely
how
right.
you.
You're putting together these sort of elements that I see as a really proactive, I wouldn't say just sex education. I'm quite happy with the word relationships and sex education, which is what we call it now in England, because relationships are so important. But our relationships with the opposite sex are not all sort of courting or, in bed with each other, whatever. It's the schoolmaster, it's the woman across the boardroom, or it's the boy next door to me here. We're sexual beings in the whole of us. and also our relationship is with members of our own sex. So, relationships are so broad. But you mentioned siblings, and this is another of my great loves. I mean, we're lucky enough to have 4 children. I would have loved to have had more. We had as many as God gave us. But it was complete news to me, not news, complete discovery to me, how much younger children give to older children. I knew that older children gave a lot to younger ones. I had no idea until I experienced it in my own family, how much it worked the other way around as well. And it saddens me that so many families now are, when I say artificially small, there's always been small families, big families. I love any size family. My father was an only boy. My mother only had one sister. But I've got friends who've got 9 children. I got every sort of family. And that's absolutely beautiful. But you've got an artificial state where you've got so many families with only 1 or 2 children. And that means you no longer have the aunts and uncles, you no longer have the cousins, you no longer have the sort of neighborhood kinship, the sort of natural way of learning all these things. And I'm convinced myself, and this is not spoken of, but one reason why we have so many nurseries is because we no longer get that socialization of children just in the home. My children never went to nursery. They went on to boarding school later, and you might think that's crazy. I could explain that, but I mean, they never went to nursery. And I may say the first instance, because we had so little money that we didn't even have the money to put in the car to the free nursery up the road. And then I realized it wasn't necessary. Can I divert on something on that? Because it's something else is just
Sure.
passion of mine, and I've never heard anyone else say it. I've loved your comment on it. For a short time, we had my sister in the house, and she had her children too. So for 6 months, we had 2 mothers, first of all 3 children, then 5 children. 1 month, 5 children under the age of 3. I sort of experienced nursery, and I learned that when you have a certain number of children, you need toys. Now, when my sister left, I was back down to my then sort of 2-year-old and baby. And my 2-year-old did all the things that 2-year-olds do when they're at home. And I can specifically remember him helping Mummy fill up the paddling pool. This was work. I was going there with a big bowl, and he was going there with his little pot. He was learning to work. And I have always thought there's something unnatural about adults spinning round small children, because I think children should be spinning round adults, because in their play, they're making sense of the adult world. And they're making sense of it in all sorts of ways. I mean, a lot of it has to be fun. If it's not fun, then it's nothing. They're doing the things that we all know about that they get in the nurseries, putting little shapes down holes and that sort of thing. They're learning relationships, but they're learning work. And they're learning that adults work, and that when you empty the washing machine, there's meaning. And I'll tell you that it was one of those sort of light bulb moments. We had very little money at that time, and I didn't have the money to buy lots of toys, and I didn't have the money for that toy where you turned this and up came a cow and you pushed that and something else happened. But I suddenly realized when I turned a tap, water came out. So instead of a cow springing up, I had water. And when we were in the supermarket, I would say to my son, "Can you pick me 3 apples?" And then I'd say, "Can you add an extra one? How many apples make 4? Okay, 3 plus 1 is 4." When he was sitting in the trolley, but it meant something. And I actually think that one of the reasons why children later on live in this sort of funny world of sort of leisure is that they've missed out on that early moment when they not only learn about relationships, so we all know that little ones want to marry and all those sort of sweet things they do when they're tiny, but they've missed out on that very basic concept of work. Does that make sense, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I remember my son setting the table when he could just barely reach high enough to put the spoon on the table. So he was working in the kitchen from the time he was still wearing diapers. He was still he was tiny little kid. And he always wanted to cook things when he got older. He always made us breakfast,
Wonderful.
and I know he's
Yes.
still, now that he's a father and he has 3 children, he's as likely to be able to cook dinner as his wife is,
Brilliant.
right?
Yes.
So, and
Yes.
my kids stayed home with me too.
Yeah.
I was fortunate when I went to Boston. I had no green card. I couldn't work when we were in the States, when Jordan was teaching at Harvard. But we lived in a community, and I had been missing my family. So I was looking for those people in my neighborhood. And one of the ladies had a baby, and I sent her a dinner when she first had her baby. And she ended up giving me her 2 kids while she went back to work, who were the same age as my kids. And so then I had 4 kids. And in fact, people think I had all those little kids. I didn't. But when we moved to Toronto, again, there were kids who were homeschooled. So they were at home most of the time. Whenever they weren't at home, they were at our house, because they were twins, and my kids were only just 2 years apart. So they were the same age in some ways. And so, having all those children together also was very helpful, because they learned so much from each other. And that meant that I could be there, but not orchestrating what was happening.
Yes. I think that's lovely.
And that was
really,
good.
really lovely.
Mm-hmm.
So lovely. I mean, I should say that, curiously, I was actually brought up by a nanny, but because my parents are diplomats, and she was the sort of nanny who stayed with us forever, and we all adored her. Really good experience. But when our first son was born, I had this instinct: would nanny approve? I was amazed because we hadn't had nanny for ages. And then I thought, I want to be a hands-on mother. When our children have their children, I don't want them to think, would nanny approve? I want them to know that this is their mother. But it meant that I was a pretty kind of instinctive mother. I didn't have much experience of children at all. And I didn't have that sort of hands-on experience of my own mother. And so an awful lot of it was kind of trial and error and, see what
I think
happens.
it's always like that. Well, I was the youngest of 4, so I didn't have any little kids to take care of. I was the youngest. And and also I was quite a bit younger. So when my siblings had their babies too, I wasn't around for that. So I didn't really have a lot of experience taking care of kids. So when I had my kids, it was just my husband and I. So I learned. I think I had an instinct for it. I didn't second guess myself, really. I mean, as long as I took care of the baby when the baby cried, and then the baby didn't cry, I didn't question whether that was good enough. It was good enough,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I tended to be a bit hands-off. And there was one moment when one of our sons was heading out of the gate on his little bicycle thing, and we had a very steep hill just outside the door, and I thought, ouch, thank goodness for guardian angels that I was looking up at that minute. But they all survived.
Yes, that's for sure. You could have had a long road down the hill.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
dear. Yeah. And so in America, in North America, as in England, I imagine too, there's more single families now. There's single mothers and single fathers. Not as many intact families as there used to be. There's a higher number of divorced people as well. So there are children in the schools now who are dealing with that as well. So is there anything that this program does to help those people who are in fractured families to find more understanding of relationships?
The whole program was basically built up on that. And
Okay.
something that you'll find Christine insists upon is that it's an anthropological program and not a sociological program. Because when people look at our books, they will say, but here's a married mother and father, and where are all these other types of family? But this is all done on purpose, because what we're trying to do is to model not brilliant family life, ordinary family life, with all the ups and downs and the times. I mean, a big part of Alive to the World is knowing how to say sorry and how to begin again and how to own up. So it's not, let's get it all right first time, but we paint in people who might come from split homes, but we don't actually say so. We certainly paint in grandparent figures, grandmother on her own, granddad and grandma together.
Mhm.
But the reason we don't paint in actual single mothers or, any other kind of combination of other types of family is that we really are trying to give every child the aspiration that they, regardless of their background, can have that lifelong friendship and love, which all children actually long for, and that is secured most often in marriage. So if you like, there's that second opportunity. Now, if you bring in other types of family and paint them in, you have to say something about them. You have to either say they're just as good or whatever, or this is not going to give you as much happiness or whatever. You've got to say something. So what we do is in our teacher guides, we are very clear that every teacher needs to be very sensitive and to understand their children well and never to embarrass them and all of that. But what the program actually does is, particularly when it begins from the very youngest children, it gets all of them speaking frankly, but not having to talk about themselves. That was another aspect of storytelling. They can really talk about Charlie and really talk about Alice, but they don't have to admit what's going on in their lives. But at the same time, the teachers can pick up lots of things. So the teachers get to know their children better and can then give more individual help. But that's how we do it. So what I would actually say is that what we really do have is a very, very clear goal of what we're trying to achieve. And that goal is giving children the wherewithal, completely up to them what they do with it, but the aspiration and the strengths of character and the sense of self-trust to achieve their vocation of a long-lasting love, however they find that. Might not be in marriage, might be in a single life. It could be a priest, a nun, or just a single life, a wonderful teacher. It could be anything. But you haven't given them obstacles which they will have to get round in order to have a sort of happy, fulfilled adult life.
Right. So, so you've spoken in various countries. Do you see cultural differences regarding discussions around sexuality and family values in different countries?
It would be true to say that other than in Kazakhstan, and I went round in Australia. I was touring around various different sites, and we spoke to quite a few people. I was astonished, as I think I've probably expressed, by this. I'd never met such a such enmity, I would even say, as we encountered in Melbourne. That was a bit of a shock. But otherwise, I've mainly gone to World Congress of Families and places where I'm meeting fellow campaigners. So I haven't been out in the sort of out in the countryside discovering more about the families there. But I would,
And
but
people
I would.
aren't bringing different issues to the conferences from different
Well,
countries.
that in because I was in Croatia, I remember. In Croatia and in Georgia, Tbilisi, Georgia, they were still trying to do much more to resist the sort of coming in of the aggressive sex education, whereas
Right.
we've had it for years. So to some extent, I suppose there was more of the preemption, whereas I would say that in England, we've had the whole thing for so long. We perhaps matured through it and have seen the results more clearly, and therefore perhaps
Yeah,
have a
right.
stronger message to give other people. But I think very similar
I was
issues we
in
do find.
we were in Romania and Albania,
Right?
and the thing that we noticed while we were there was that it has not been that long since communism has 1992 when they stopped having that imposed upon them, and they're still recovering from that, but they can't believe that the rest of the world, the Western world, is toying with the idea of communism, seeing how much they suffered under it. It was, I think, shocking to them and terrifying
Yeah.
to them.
Yes. I can well
So,
believe that. Yeah. Because my father was actually also in Romania as a diplomat, so I remember that country when it was under communism. I mean,
oh,
another,
gee.
one little glimpse, if you like, is when David and I, after our little tour in Kazakhstan, we went and had a bit of a holiday, and we were down in the south in the Muslim bit, and we had a delightful young Muslim father who was our guide. And he asked why we were in Kazakhstan in November. It's not some normal tourist time in that country. And I explained what we were doing. And something I found humbling was that he was astonished to find a Christian who was standing up for family values and who didn't believe in sort of any kind of thing goes within the family. And he actually stuck his hand out and shook my hand. He was so surprised. So
Wow,
I thought,
that's something,
yes.
isn't it?
I thought that, when we hear people sometimes think we have to go along with what others think because otherwise we're somehow or other not being kind or whatever. And I think that people don't realize how much faith we've lost in other countries because we're not standing up, particularly as Christians, for our Christian values.
Right. What do you think are the most effective strategies to help parents with their roles in primary, as they are primary educators of their children about sexuality and relationships, alongside of what's going on in the school
Yes.
system? I don't know, but in Canada, we have a long ways to go to get back to something traditional in our education systems.
Well, the same here. I should say everything that I'm saying is not what everybody's doing by any means. I think the
Right.
best thing is actually getting parents together. Parents love, particularly in not necessarily very large groups, smaller groups, having someone, I think, helps, who can lead them and to give them ideas and who can I think that explaining some of the biology and the fertility, etc., is a window into opening the subject up. But then from there, of course, there's people want to know about, when, that's a big question. When should we start learning? When should we start teaching? And I always assure parents, absolutely now, not to teach your children everything, but start learning yourself. And then being ready to answer in a very simple way, because of course, in the earliest ages, it's usually the child who will ask some question and the parents can get all complicated. But you want to just answer
And
very
of course
simply,
they ask,
yeah. And then, but being,
especially if the mother has a baby. If
of
the mother has a
course,
baby, there are so many
absolutely.
questions.
Completely so. And one of the things I do point out to them is that children are by nature very pro-life, because if they see a lovely picture of a babe in the womb or whatever, they're not thinking that's the products of conception who might be a bit in the way, they're thinking, that was me. That was really exciting. And so they are by nature very pro-life. And but they're also very good at telling parents, that's not, don't want to hear no anymore. And they're entitled to that.
Yeah, right. Right.
I mean, one good friend of mine actually was using my book with, I think she was the sort of early, because she was the one with the 9 children. She had, say, 13, 14 or whatever. She was using the book with this girl. And her daughter said, I know all of that. I don't want to hear anymore. So, okay, she stopped. But then later, that same girl was actually going over to the States to university. And so her mother wanted just to make sure that she knew it correctly. And so at that, if you like, later age, the daughter was happy to sit down with her and go through the things. Now, children are entitled to that. And it's one of the reasons that I'm so against class education, is that it's the parents or the adults or the teachers who make the decision, you are now going to learn this. But actually, children have a right to learn at the pace they want to learn. And they can learn some things, and then that's it for the moment. And that's fine. But there are times, obviously, when the parents know that they're going to receive whatever it is at school, where they will know that they need to take the subject further in order to protect the child or to pre-warn them or whatever it is. And that's when, and I model it in my book, because I teach by modeling as well, the mum or the dad needs to make time when he or she knows she's going to be alone with the child and sit down and start drawing maybe a few diagrams and go into a little bit more detail. And that's when the parents need to be up to date with what the school is teaching, what the child's friends might be learning. You have to have your ear to the ground. And that's where, sadly, many parents will say, but the school is pushing this along and it's too soon for my child. And that breaks my heart, actually.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I guess if you were going to change the school system, what would be the change that you would make?
I would have schools, and not only schools, but youth groups. It could be within a church, it could be not in a church, whatever. Encouraging parents to get together in these groups. Now, you won't immediately get every parent there. And that's where I say, okay, let's work with the leaders. In any other subject, you work with the leaders. There will be some parents there who are able to start it up, and then they will encourage their friends, and you can snowboard it from there. So that is sort of number one, getting parents better able to teach. Now, there are other programs that can help do that. I don't know. Do you know the Natural Womanhood website?
No.
It's brilliant.
No, I don't.
Absolutely brilliant. I can thoroughly recommend it. They've got programs on there for mother-daughter sessions and things like that too. And there may be other, things around. So, so number one, in whatever way, is helping the parents teach their own children. And with that goes looking at what's going on in primary schools and making sure, with the parent support, that not too much is being taught too soon, because very often schools are doing more than they actually have to do by law, and that needs to be watched. Then there's all the character education, which I've described, because, as you've rightly said, we're now dealing with lots of families who don't have the values themselves. They often can have the values inside themselves, but they may not be expressing it in the ways that they're currently living. And that is jolly difficult. And, I know people closely in my own family who are single mothers, single fathers, etc. And it's so untrue to suggest that they don't want their child to marry. They want their child to have the best life, and they want support. And so they need other people to help them, give them that support. But also the children themselves need to have a good vocabulary to talk to their friends. So I really like the fact that A Lie to the World is done in straightforward language without religion brought in. For me, it works, but everyone to their own, different programs, but you need that sense of drawing together the best values to live life well, which is also, of course, in studies, in career, in anything. It's not just in family. Then I reckon that once the children reach adolescence, they actually want their peers and their favorite teachers or their favorite other adults to support what they've learnt, hopefully in the home. And that's where I really support something like the Teen Star approach, where there have to be taught good, right things, not wrong things, but good, right things, can be done outside the home, but in such a way that parents know what's going on, approve it, are educated with it, but it's all, but is supported also in the home. And then, of course, particularly for faith schools, that the spiritual side is brought up and it's shown how all these things match. And then you've got everything working together. And that to me would be the ideal. Teen Star, I think, is a marvelous program, but it's very intensive and it works for small groups. So I haven't yet found ways to put their type of education, roll it out onto a larger scale. So that's something I'm is my present quest. If you have ideas, I'd be so pleased to know.
Man, your devotion to this is something else, really. I mean, to see and to put yourself out there as a leader and an educator, and now with a book. So, when did that book come out?
2013.
Okay.
So it is,
How has it been accepted and used?
People who have used it have given me very, very positive feedback. And actually, the moment that I was really most thrilled, I sold it to some woman at a little baby conference, and I was there at the table, and I'd forgotten I'd sold it to this particular lady. And she came back a year or two later, and she came up to me and she said, "I bought your book." And she was a social worker, and she was working particularly with single mothers in poor parts of London. And she said, "I use your book with my single mothers, and I let them see it, I let them use it, and if they like it, I buy a copy out of my own money to give it to them." And she did then admit, and I get a second-hand copy if I can, with a bit of an apology, she said that. But then she added, and this really went to my heart, she said, "If my bosses knew that I was doing this, I'd be given the sack." But what she was really saying to me was that these single mothers, because my book does very much what Alive to the Well does, it gently paints in this whole thing of the importance of family and the importance of marriage, but taking it up from why it's important, from where the children's perspective would be on all of this as well. And of course, this is something that is very, very difficult for a single mother who may have all the desires in the world to be able to teach her own child. And I actually had a single father who's happened to be the father of a friend of mine. He said much the same thing from the father's point of view. So those are the things that really, really thrill me. But it's been produced by a lovely publisher, but it's quite a small publishing house. And so I should say it's been translated into Spanish, so that's a great new thing.
Oh, good.
And there was a lovely group in Romania, and also got French friends who've been, and even some in Polish who've been translating it. But all of this is done by volunteer labor, and going from the love of people to taking it to a publishing house, that's a bit of a difficult step. So that step hasn't happened, but it certainly touched people.
What do you think about recording an audiobook with your voice? I think you'd be good at that.
Tammy, you were very kind.
You have enthusiasm.
I hate listening to my voice. I find that.
You don't have to listen to it.
I have to sort of steel myself to listen to myself. So you're very sweet.
You know that sometimes those things that we're most shaken by are something that we should pay attention to, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, that would be another way, because many more people listen than read. Many more.
Gosh, how would you do that then? Would you just say reading the story? Because, of course, it's got lots of diagrams in it.
You would just be reading the story with someone there recording it for you. So you'd go to a recording studio.
Wow. And then you mean that someone recording it would put up the diagrams, because the diagrams are very important. Wouldn't that work? Or the diagrams could be, the diagrams are actually on our website, come to think of it. They're already there.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that. There might be a way to do diagrams, but I don't know.
No, that's
You'd have to
amazing
ask. That
idea.
would be a complication. I think that's a good idea, because
wow,
a lot more people listen. We know that, right? Like many, many more people listen than read.
Gosh, I'd never thought of that. Thank you.
And especially people can listen while they work.
Yes.
So it isn't something you have to sit down to do. So you're more likely to have your book read if you have it on audiobook.
Well, thank you for that suggestion.
You're
I'll
welcome.
have to think about it.
I think that,
yes.
Yeah, think about it and reach out to your publisher and see what the options are for you.
Right.
It was someone, I can't remember who it was, whose book came out. Oh, I know, it was called Wild at Heart, and it was about men, helping men. And he wrote it 10 years ago, and he just did the audiobook, and now he's speaking about it again, because it's like a new book in a way, because now it's the audiobook, and so now there's more to talk about. So, right?
Well,
so it's like
that's a brilliant idea.
A new edition or something. Yeah.
That is an absolutely brilliant idea. Thank you. Thank you for your
welcome.
encouragement.
You're welcome.
That means a lot.
Oh, you're welcome. So thank you very much for coming onto my podcast.
Well, it's a huge
It was fun
pleasure,
talking
Tammy.
to you, and I'm encouraged by what you're doing. I look forward to speaking with Christine and getting some more information about the Alive to the World. We each have to do our part, and you're doing your part. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Tammy. And you do more than your part. I love listening to you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. I need help in everything I do.
Don't we all?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I wouldn't be doing this by myself. That's for sure.
No.
Not even going out on stage. I have to ask for courage and strength every time before I go out on stage.
Yes.
I couldn't do this by myself. No. There's no way.
No. Well, I may say that there have been so many moments in my life when I can sort of feel Providence giving me something extraordinary. So, no, it's really, really quite special. So thank you.
My pleasure. So take care of yourself and tell me how it goes, okay?
Will do.
Tell me how the process goes. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I should love that.